This is a projection mapping concept in order to build an exhibition for Roman machines coming to the region soon. The idea is to build a projection that could go on the outside or perhaps in the inside, but the first thing was to get a concept for it. So this is basically it. The idea is to create something along the lines of under construction, sort of relates to the old, relates to the new, but within that work with the Roman machines. Roman machines, probably one of the best ones out there was the Catapult, so we're going to really play with that one because it creates an impact, and we can play with a bit of fire, a bit of impact, and a bit of animation at the same time. Now here's a concept just here, which is just looking at the two frames. There's basically two walls that we're going to work with this particular concept. The idea is that on one of the walls there'd be the projection under construction, dissolve or fade or merge into a cog or a part of the machine revolving around, probably one of the main key parts of the catapult system itself. That would then turn into the assemblance of the full catapult machine, like example. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 into it spinning around, really showing the whole machine. It would load a projectile and then it would fire, probably rumble a bit. Of course, we'd have sound effects, and that would fade out. So that's basically wall number 1. This is probably quite quick, just running over a 2-minute tops, etc. So on to wall number 2. Just after a few seconds there'll be a glow on one of the walls. Actually, one of the walls of the projection would turn it into a very Roman-like wall. The glow appears onto it, and the projectile just smacks into the wall, causing a massive amount of devastation. The wall crumbles, but under the wall would be the Roman machines titling, and the disc or the sphere would just bounce off the wall and would settle down there as sort of a third projection. To keep costs down and sort of change a little bit, this idea changed just a bit, being that it would rebuild itself. Sort of works with the construction concept, and not leaving a destruction but sort of rebuilding itself, and perhaps setting up for the loop of the second part of the setup. Now I'm just going to close this. Here's just a few of the files, and the first one I'll just look at a file that went with that, basically went with the storyboard, which was just because it was a very rough storyboard. Sometimes it needs to do a very clean finished storyboard, but the storyboard had a panoramic scene that was just put together with a few images in the panoramic setup in Photoshop, stitched together, and just chucked a few elements on the top to give a better idea. So here's the main scene, so entrance into the Museum of Art, Science and History. Just blowing this particular scene up a little bit here, and just moving it across. This catapult on one side, it'll do its business, etc. Quite simple on basically a cloth that would be stretched down over the theatre, and then a few seconds later lands or projected onto the other side, and really plays with the other wall. So this was the initial concept of how it started off, and then it started to be built, and it was taken all the way through to pre-visualization. So I'm just going to close this one, and of course with pre-visualization needed to come up with a Foley track for the sound as well. So part of that is, if I just open up just an example of the sound, just working within a 2-minute framework. Now, no matter what you start off with, it's always subject to change, but you need something to begin with in order to set you on the right track. So this was just basically worked out, wall 1, wall 2, and how the sounds would fit in there, different sounds relating to the different effects that it was wanting to create the right sort of atmosphere. Based on that, sound was put together. So if I just bring up the sound, which in this case software I use is Soundtrack Pro. Not really available now, but it's just a great little tool, but probably have to go into Logic, but you can just scroll through and have a look at anything. It's just a matter of going into the different sound effects. There's a whole ton of loops and sound effects and foley tracks, and just building what you want in order to get the thing going. Just out of view is just the play here, but I'll just play that just to get it going and give you a quick idea. So just the start, and it starts building, and then sort of finally fades off at the end. So with that built, of course, needed to start working with some of the 3D aspects. So I'll just close that for the time being and close this. In here, it was actually a model I bought from 3D Studio, and it was quite a cool Catapult. So I just bought the model, and the software that I'm actually using for putting this together is a piece of software called Strata 3D CX. It's version 7 I've got. It's actually a nice, simple, easy to use program, and great for more the projection type, I suppose, scenery, and it can work quite quick with it. Great for working with other things, illustration, web, and motion graphics without an enormous price tag and a massive learning curve. It's quite a good piece of software, but I'll just go play that through. Here's just one scene with the Catapult. Now the Catapult came textured, but it did need to be rigged up and in order to animate it. But here's just an example of that scene. So here's the just running for, I think it was just a 3 second, so it went a little bit slower than that, but where you can actually set up and just set out what you want. And of course from this you can set up any rendering for in size as well, and play with your lighting, different cameras and whatever. But for the particular projection mapping, it was actually really wanted to have it in place, not like when you're doing a a trailer or a motion graphic stuff where you can jump around different scenes. This is sort of trying to set up as it is virtually on place, etc. So got the main scenes, the storyboard's done, the concept sort of on the way, etc. Got the 3D models, built a whole lot of scenes and rendered them out, and in order to put that together, that was just put together in motion. So I'll just close this for the time being, and basically motion, I've just got a sort of a mock-up scene here. I'll just click on this to open it up. As you can see, as that's beginning to open, I don't think it did open then, I'll just click again. But there's a whole range of files here that even just go out of view, a whole range of numerous 3D elements that were put together, and then it was just basically editing those to best fit. So as it loads up, it's quite a chunky file that was put together, but and that was built for the 2 movies basically that related to each side of the scene here. So if I just move that across, there's the scene. But after I rendered the movies, then I just dropped them in here in order to show the movie I'm going to show you shortly, which is just basically how it will go together for pre-visualization. Basically, this is a great software to put it together, the same as if you're using After Effects or Apple's Motion 5 in this case, which I must admit I really do like, because you can work live into it, even without having to stop and render. You can just chuck other elements in there and effects to see how they're going without even stopping the playhead, etc. So one thing I really like about the program, and of course it's very cheap at about $50 US to buy. I also use Final Cut Pro, works great with it as well, Final Cut Pro 10. So we've got this image put together. What I'm going to do is basically you can put all sorts of effects. You can go in here into library, and there's a ton of different filters and effects and particle effects, etc. So if I was just to say click down and just one here for sort of aura, you can actually see how it's going up here and sort of play through. You get a quick guide to it and just apply it, or just drag it straight into either your layers, or you can go straight onto your object as well, depending on what you want to do. So it's very, very nice and quick and quite simple to work with. Has 3D cameras if you want to go into more full-on type things as well. So anyway, that's just a quick insight to motion. Let's just have a look at how this file went together. So I'm just going to quit that for the moment, get a little bit of memory, and I'll just bring up the 3D file here. Now it was fairly high resolution. I've just dropped it down a bit to fit, but when I play this, I'll just play it larger into the movie so you can see a little bit better. And essentially, here's the video. So I'll just play this through. It's 2 minutes long altogether because there's quite a bit of time at the end just to fade out, and it could be set up for looping. But this is a pre-visualization. We haven't touched any mapping at this stage. You know, in order to get into that stuff, which does cost a bit, getting the projection set up, or 3 projectors we're looking at this stage, with coverage depending on the weather, and of course power source, and a range of other things to set up at the same time and test it all out. It's much easier to just show it, to sell the idea, just getting this previs. So I'll just play this through. Okay, so that's a previs. That's an example of how it could look without the cost of putting everything together and finding out that somebody doesn't like it, etc. So to get buy-in, a great way to do that. And we haven't even touched the mapping stage at this point. This is just setting it up, so you can see that a lot of work actually goes into getting the concept, basically approval stage, completed in order to go into the final. So the next stage, of course, is to find out if we're going to be inside or outside, exactly what else is needed, etc. And then go through and set it up for the night, and hopefully for a few nights of that. So there's an example of working with roaming machines for an up-and-coming exhibition, setting up as a concept stage to previs for projection mapping.